Hello and welcome to today's session. In this lecture, I want to talk about female education in Afghanistan, or women's education in Afghanistan, which is perhaps a lot different than many other nations around the world. Women make up 50% of the population, every country, every industry. Without their success in the family, in the community, in the government, in the culture, the nation will be less competitive. So it's very important for the current leaders to pay attention to the equality of education for both young boys and girls in any society, especially in Afghanistan. Most of the time when we think about Afghanistan, perhaps from the last few years, many of you think about scenarios of young Afghans rushing into the airport, trying to leave the country. Naturally, security is in the top of mind for everybody in Afghanistan because they have been at war for the past 4 decades since 1970s. So unfortunately, many young Afghans have grown up with that mindset of security not being there for them, bombs dropping at them, gunfire being heard at all times. So it is natural for many people around the world to see Afghans as basically wanting to rush out of the country. While the reality is that the brain drain has negatively affected Afghanistan, most Afghans would rather stay in Afghanistan and serve their country, serve their people, provided that there is sufficient security. The good news is that today in 2024, there is much better security. Most Afghans do not live with the fears that they have lived over the past 4 decades, which is a good trend. But nonetheless, unfortunately, many young women and little girls are disadvantaged because they have been banned from going to school beyond the 6th grade, and many Afghan women have been banned from work in some of the industries because of insecurity or because the proper resources are not available to make it viable for them based on cultural norms in Afghanistan. Today, we have an opportunity to hear from the author of One Life in Afghan Remembers, which was recently published. So Dr. Abdul Qayum Safi will be speaking about his memoir and the realities that he experienced going through life in Afghanistan and then becoming an expatriate outside and then eventually going back to Afghanistan more recently. According to Dr. Safi, the normal lives of most Afghans were disrupted in the late 1970s. Many of them moved from villages to cities in search of security, and some crossed the border to Pakistan and Iran, where they found the largest refugee camps in the world. There were some factors that divided Afghans during the 1970s and 80s and 90s. Things like education levels, language differences, gender, obviously, and cultural differences among different ethnic groups that divide Afghans. However, the same factors can be used to unify Afghans through a truly democratic government that works for the interest of everyone in Afghanistan, instead of favoring one's own ethnicity or the interest of elected officials. This is what Dr. Safi mentions in his book, One Life in Afghan Remembers. One of those factors that divide Afghans or have divided Afghans has been gender. There has been gender discrimination in Afghanistan for hundreds of years, perhaps. So women do not receive a fair share of even family inheritance. So sometimes there are institutional barriers or religious barriers that get in the way when proper resources are not available to align with security and dignity and honor that people expect for both boys and girls. Unfortunately, the young girls suffer a little bit more in the area of education in this case compared to the boys. So gender inequity in education is exactly what we're going to talk about with the author of One Life in Afghan Remembers, Dr. Abdul Qayum Safi, who's here to share his thoughts and insights about his book on gender education in Afghanistan. Let us welcome him and ask him some questions. So Dr. Safi was born in the mountainous remote district of Pesh Kunar province in eastern Afghanistan. He's actually one of the oldest children out of 10 in his family. So they were forced to survive on very little while growing up on extremely traditional and conservative Pashtun tribal society in Afghanistan. And he was exposed to various challenges actually early on in his life, which he shares in this book in a very detailed memoir, which are all factual because he lived through it in Afghanistan when he was a child, when he was an adult, and then he moved to the Middle East and to North America. So much of his life has been actually in the United States, in the Western world, which he'll share with you in this interview. And a combination of intention, hope, and luck allowed him to cross the borders of his native land, Afghanistan, into the wider world. So his story is one of hardships, ups and downs, and volatile twists and turns, but it has turned out very well so far, and we're lucky to have him here. Dr. Safi, thank you again for sharing your time. What I want to start with is basically if you can tell us what motivated you to write this book about one life in Afghan Remembers?
Thank you, Professor Mujtaba, and welcome everybody else. The motivation or the inspiration came during some informal meetings with my colleagues and friends. And during those meetings, you usually discuss your personal life. And so when we were discussing that, I was reminded several times to write a book about my life. And that's what the inspiration came about. So then what happened was I was thinking about it, and then I was, the last job I was working in Virginia, it was like probably the early, middle 60s, and I thought about writing a book. So what I did was really planning the book was that, first of all, I wrote down important events chronologically in my life, and then made an outline. That outline was I kept revising and updating the outline. So it came to a manuscript, and manuscript was divided into chapters, and I reached a stage that I thought I had written everything that was possible about my life. So I said, let's send it to a publisher. It went to a publisher, and they accepted, they agreed to publish it. And the last publisher was last published in 2022 by Newman Springs Publishing in New Jersey, and it's available right now in front of you.
Well, thank you very much for writing such an extraordinary book about your life and also what millions of Afghans have gone through over the past 5-6 decades. It's an extraordinary book that discusses so many facts from a personal point of view. And obviously, I could relate to it because I was also born in Afghanistan at a young age. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to go to middle school, high school, and then eventually have the opportunity to come to the Western world and continue my higher education just like you. Now, in the preface of your book regarding immigrants in the United States, you wrote that we have not exactly been welcomed with open arms. And I believe that much of that is because people have certain misconceptions about our religious beliefs, our cultural habits, and how we live. What can educators, trainers, international managers do in the American society or workplace, or even in European communities, to remove some of these misconceptions about immigrants from Afghanistan?
Well, it depends on where you live and what happens in the world and around you. When I came to New York in the early 70s and then lived there for 5 years, I didn't notice any discrimination in New York. It's possibly because there's a metropolitan city and there are a lot of people who look like me and everybody else. So And in addition, probably I was studying there. I was too busy and not aware of any discrimination. Actually, I was not really in contact with a lot of people there. So that was one of the crowds there. So didn't notice that. And then in 1986, when I came from Kuwait after employment, 13 years of employment in Kuwait, to Rhode Island. I settled there in a middle-class community. I don't remember any other, like my neighbors were, as I remember, all were white. So I don't remember any Black family living close to me or any other from other ethnic origin, the affiliation. So that was we had and I was working at the Department of Education at that time. So we had a street corner house, and the two neighbors, immediate next door neighbors, had the same 8 children as my children's my children. I mean, we tried to reach out to them, but they kind of kept their distance. And we always invited them to our house. One of my child's birthdays, her kid probably enjoyed it, but the mother was not very comfortable there. So, and what I thought was from the neighbors, some thought that I was Black and others thought I was an Arab. So there were a lot of thinking and talking about, probably people were talking about as to the new neighbor who is different from them. So that is what it happened. But the problem was, I mean, the good thing was, like you see, at the end of, there was light at the end of the tunnel. We got friends with other members of the families in the community who had children our age. So we became friends, and like you say, after a while, life became normal. So that is what it depends on where you live. It depends on, I mean, what happens around you. Like you say, like especially after 9/11, I found out that whenever I was traveling, the person at behind the counter at the airport, I mean, they ask more questions from me than other passengers. And several times, one time I saw a uniformed gentleman standing behind me in the line. When I looked around, after a while, he was gone. So I don't know why he was there. Twice, we will stop for additional interrogation at the airport. So those were the things that really that happened, that kind of made me aware of that I was treated differently than other people.
Dr. Safi, thank you for mentioning the discriminatory practices sometimes people use, unfortunately, due to misconceptions, whether it's in the United States, Europe, Asia, it happens everywhere. In the textbook, you did write that you were exposed to discrimination early in life in Afghanistan when you were young, as a young boy. What specific forms of discrimination did you face growing up in Kunar or in Kabul areas of Afghanistan? And are these biases and stereotypes still practiced in some parts of Afghanistan or all parts of Afghanistan? What are your thoughts and examples?
Well, I was born in a rural, kind of isolated village. And after elementary school, I came out of that life and I traveled for about 3 weeks to reach the capital city, Kabul, where I had to study in a secondary school. So on the way, it was everywhere is city life. You go there, you don't know anyone in the city. You stay in a caravanserai where the drivers from the local areas, other areas come and spend the night. Passengers come and stay there. So, and you are like about 13-year-old staying in that place with strangers, and then try to survive. I mean, looking back at my life there, those days in the city, I could easily be robbed, kidnapped. I don't know, but probably I was too young to think about that one. Then after landing in Kabul and going to the secondary school there, it was a boarding school for the boys who had graduated from elementary schools in the rural areas throughout the country. So they were there. They were being fed. We spent 24 hours in the school, but outside in Kabul, it was a different world. Like, you see, I had to learn a new language. I had to deal with different life. The life in the city is very different from the rural areas. When I landed in Kabul, I thought I was in a different country. And learning a language, people, the city people look at the rural people as kind of second-class citizens. I don't know, like that. They don't think that they are at the same level. So that was kind of, I felt that discrimination throughout my staying and life in Kabul. But one thing good was that I was in the boarding school, and with those, all the students were from other areas, and I knew, like, you see, we could get along with each other. We knew so that was like easy for me to survive and like proceed with life in the city.
Obviously, it must have been very scary and difficult at a young age to go to a strange city. And as you mentioned in the textbook, you left Kunar province at the young age of 13, all by yourself, to travel hundreds of kilometers to a different city, in this case, the capital of Afghanistan, Kabul, where you only knew one person. That was your cousin who was an officer in the Afghan army. Naturally, as a young boy in a new city, you faced many challenges and successfully overcame them to continue your education and then go on to college. So sometimes it could be dedicated to your level of intelligence and maturity, sometimes luck, obviously, because a lot of negative things could happen in a big city, especially when a young boy is all by himself and does not know the area. Are the traveling opportunities at age 13 that you actually took from Kunar to Kabul to continue education all by yourself, are such opportunities also available to young girls in Afghanistan to travel from rural areas to continue their education in the capital city like Afghanistan, either in the primary, in the middle school, or high school level, or at the secondary level, which would be college education? What are your thoughts regarding those experiences?
The time I graduated from the elementary school and traveled at that time, if I were a girl, it would be impossible. Because first of all, there was no girls' school in the area. Now, in that district, and now at that time, the whole province, that's the province right now, we didn't have any girls' school, and the only schools available there were elementary schools. And the graduates of those schools, a selected number of those schools, graduates, would be accepted at the boarding schools in Kabul to come. But for the girls, even if there were like a girls' school there, the parents may not allow their girls to travel. I mean, traditionally, if you are a man, you can travel on your own, but a woman has to be accompanied by what they call mahram. Is the person who is not eligible to marry you. So that would be like your father, your brother, your uncle. So those people to be accompanied by them. And like if you have a school, like like you see, like nowadays, even secondary education schools are available in the rural areas. But if you go to college, then in the cities, life there is a little bit different because people there will be all strange. It will be in a strange environment. Second, it depends on if they have dorms there, and if your family will allow you to stay in the dorm. Then you have to know, otherwise you have to know someone, you have to have accommodation there. And those are all difficulties for a woman to travel and live in like to continue their education beyond the one that you, let's say from high school and from the elementary school.
And unfortunately, those are experiences that we had when we were living, and sadly, that has not changed very much. Those same problems exist today in 2024 environment in Kabul, where the boys do have some advantages and privileges that are not afforded to young girls or our daughters and granddaughters and sisters and wives, unfortunately, in Afghanistan. So hopefully that will be not the case in the distant future. You did write that oftentimes family members in rural areas of Kabul or outside of Kabul in other districts are likely to object to their daughter's education or to pull them out of school at an earlier age. Why is that, based on your assessment?
Well, according to the Afghan culture is a male-dominated culture. It's a patriarchal, male-dominated culture, and in that one, man has the power. So if you are a boy, you are an asset to your family. You get married, you bring your wife to the house, your parents' house. You live there with them, and then after the parents die, you inherit the property and continue life. If you are a woman, then when you reach the marital age at that time to get married, then you will be married off and you will become a member of your husband's family. So we'll go there. So in that case, the families in Afghanistan usually prefer boys because they depend on the families depend on the boys. They don't depend on the girls. So this is the case. So whenever, like you see, if you are in education there, first of all, they cannot send you outside. So in that case, when you reach the proper age to be married off, then you get married and you become a member of your husband's family.
So both boys and girls are an asset. However, the way cultural norms are that the boys are an asset to his birth parents, and the girls become an asset to the family that she marries into. So that's been the custom for years and years throughout Afghanistan. It is still being practiced in many cases in today's environment. Now, to what extent do the cultural challenges facing women negatively impact Afghan women's financial capabilities as business owners, as entrepreneurs serving the community?
For business owners, women, if they, like you see, if you own a business, then you will have customers, male and female. and like talking to like the other day I was listening to a Taliban official. He was asked the same question. So he said that what would a woman do if she is like, let's say she has a store and she has a business there, a place. He was saying that if she is talking to a man, then she has to use very low voice. She cannot raise her voice there. So in that case, her, like you see, if she has a business, then in contact with the man will be limited. And with women, I mean, it will be okay. It will be normal, like woman to woman. They will do, I would say that they will do better if like they serve women in their business, like the beauty shops, women clothing, and that kind of, that they have customers, only women customers. But if they have male customers, then their contact will be very limited. And so in that case, they are at a disadvantage.
Okay, so the cultural conditioning goes really deep, as you continue to obviously emphasize in the textbook, very, very well. And, you know, it's as much as basically not raising a voice, and whether you're talking to a male or female, there's a difference in terms of vocal tone. So that is really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And now, regarding the inequality of financial status, there's some root causes to this, obviously, and inheritance is one of them. To what extent, or what does Islam actually say about inheritance distribution to men versus women in the family? And is this still practiced in Afghanistan? Why or why not? What are the cultural influences?
There may be exceptions, but we still, most of the people practice. First of all, let's see, according to the Islamic Sharia, a woman inherits half of the family property of the brother, inherited by her brother. Let's see, a family has 2 daughters and 1 son. So in that case, after the parents pass, the children, the property will be divided into half. 1 half will go to 2 sisters and 1 half will go to 1 brother. But traditionally, it's not practiced. As I said, in the male-dominated society of Afghanistan, the brother usually decides to keep the whole property for himself. It happened to me a couple of years ago, a few years ago, when my parents passed. I have 2 brothers and 4 sisters. So in that case, their property, according to the Sharia, should have been split into half. Half would go to 4 sisters and half would go to 2 brothers. But the 2 brothers kept the whole property to themselves. So in that case, we say there is a, like you say, which a man can profit more from based on the Islamic Sharia or the tradition. In this case, the tradition wins.
So tradition, obviously, in a place like Afghanistan goes back thousands of years. And nonetheless, culture has been there longer than Islam. So those norms obviously have a bigger influence or stronger influence on our behaviors on a day-to-day basis. And so now, one of the things that many would wonder is about gender in schooling of girls in Afghanistan. People have noticed it on television stations, protests, and obviously the Taliban government has banned girls from going to school beyond 6th grade, as you do mention in the textbook. Why is that? Why is it that Taliban have banned the education of girls beyond 6th grade?
Well, they had several reasons. First, they said that when they found their government, took over Kabul and they established their government, they said that the environment was not good. The situation outside the house was not very good for them. Not safe for them. So they would not be allowed to go outside the house without male companion. And so that was the main thing. And then later on, when they said that the security situation was better, they came and they stopped girls from after the elementary school, like grade 6, they were allowed to study in grade 6. After grade 6, they were asked to stay home. And they were saying that there was something like temporary by the government. When the situation gets better, they will go back to school. Then there was still in force after a year when the high school graduates, the girls, women graduates, when they applied for the entrance exam to college, they were stopped from going there and taking the exam. So more than a year now, they have been out of college. Sometimes there were government colleges, universities, and private universities. Private universities were allowed to go to classes, but they were saying that there should be different separate classes for girls and for boys. So that also didn't work, so they stopped. Now there are a few Taliban officials that are pro women education, but they follow the instructions or the orders of their Amir. And the Amir has published the orders several times. And he kind of asked the Taliban officials, the government officials, not to object to his rules. So in that case, their hands are kind of limited, like kind of tied now. So they can't do that much. But first of all, there are three things. Some of the Taliban officials that are pro women education, the women are still demonstrating in the cities everywhere, and they're asking for their rights. There is an international pressure on the Taliban to allow women education. So there are three things. Hopefully, it will reach a positive, something positive, bring something positive for women, and they will be allowed to go to school and colleges.
And obviously, all of us as Afghans and also foreigners are concerned about the security of all young women and young men in general throughout the world, especially in Afghanistan. So when insecurity is present, obviously that's a danger to both young boys and young girls, as it is for adults. However, the goal hopefully is to provide enough security to where parents feel comfortable sending their daughters and sons to colleges throughout Afghanistan. And hopefully government officials are also of the same view in pro-education for all Afghans, and whether they're boy or girl, that they can get their education. That's good to see that there's some progress in discussion in bringing security throughout the country so all boys and girls can go to school. Now, the other question I wanted to ask you is, this is the reality in Afghanistan, where unfortunately many girls are not able to go to school right now beyond 6th grade. But what does Islam actually say about the education of boys and the education of girls? Is there a disparity? Is there a difference or not?
What I have heard and what I have read, like you see from my religious education, the Islamic Sharia or Islam itself states that knowledge is obligation of all the believers. They don't say that they don't discriminate between men and women. So everybody's obligation to learn language. I mean, to learn knowledge. So in that case, there is no restrictions about religion. And even I'm sure some of the Taliban officials believe in this. Now, even a member of the Haqqani group, who is now the Minister of Interior, I heard him the other day, pro-women education. He had something of a pro-women education there. So there are a lot of Taliban leaders who are for women education. And so hopefully they will, something positive, it will reach there and women will be allowed to continue education.
Inshallah. So that is the goal and hope for all of us, whether we are in Afghanistan or outside Afghanistan. The key is to provide equal level of education opportunities to both boys and girls in society. Women and girls obviously make up nearly 50% of every society in Afghanistan. We need all of them, both boys and girls, to be the future leaders and developers in a society in such a way where every Afghan, every person in the world benefits from their contributions. And it's good to see that security is getting better. And in the book, you do mention that you remember, obviously, a lot of what was happening as you were growing up, and then the 4 decades of war and animosity that took place. But the good news is that you recently visited Afghanistan after nearly 45 years of being away. So how was the security in Afghanistan? And if security is much better and people feel safer, what can the current government do to provide more educational opportunities for females in Afghanistan? And the second part of this question is that many Afghans and foreigners have suggested that women can continue their education online through remote or even hybrid forms of education. I wanted to ask you, is online education a viable proposal for young Afghan girls and women in general in Afghanistan? Why or why not?
Well, for me, it was fulfillment of wish that I went there and visited my family after 45 years. I visited I have 4 sisters, 2 brothers, and I enjoyed staying with them for the whole month of last May. So that was a wish, really, the fulfillment. And during that time, I traveled, I traveled north because my 2 sisters and 1 brother live in the north, in Kunduz province, and we had to go through the Salang Pass. So on the way, on a round trip, we were stopped at several checkpoints everywhere. Like in every city, there's 1 or 2 checkpoints, and in every checkpoint we were stopped. So the one question they asked was, first of all, they would look inside the car at everybody. And we were only 3 of us, my brother, my nephew, and I, so we were traveling. And they were saying that, where are you coming from and where are you going? So sometimes that was enough. Our answer was enough, so they would let us go. Sometimes they will ask us to open the car trunk, and they will examine that one. So after examining it, they didn't find anything, so they closed it and asked us to leave. So the whole time I spent 1 week in the north, and didn't feel anything, you see, like something would happen to me or any danger. So it was very, very secure. Security was very good in that. But one thing, I don't know, there's a lot of unemployment there, and a lot of people jobless, and women who lost their probably husbands and other male family members are desperate now. So they can see women in the street begging. There were a lot of men. I mean, you could see the local park there walking around, just unemployed. So that's the one. Okay. So if they can increase the unemployment there, and the security will become beneficial, and it will be sustainable.
That is really good to hear. That security is much better. That's the wish that obviously all Afghans have inside Afghanistan and outside, and perhaps the world community wants the country to develop. So security is a must, and it's good to hear that security was really good based on your observations of staying in Afghanistan for over a month, and hopefully the rest of the Afghan community, the world community, non-Afghans are able to go to Afghanistan as tourists and see the history and the rich cultural heritage over the years to come. So that would hopefully bring more money to the Afghan community economically, make it better, but in the meantime, provide opportunities for more employment, jobs, in the creativity that young Afghans and adults actually have to serve their own nation as well as the rest of the world. What is your thinking about online education?
Online education is very limited. There are very few women actually there. It's mainly for women, so it's mainly controlled, like operated from the United States, from outside the country, and they're very limited number of. It may not be will be a good thing, but I don't think it's going to solve the problem. Another thing is that these days I've heard that electricity is very unreliable in Afghanistan. So if there is no electricity at the right time that you need it, then online education will become, would not be possible to operate. So in that, to provide the programs, I would say. So I would say that it's a good thing. Hopefully it is like in a large scale, but if it's in a large scale, it may be beneficial, but I don't think it's going to solve the problem. The main thing is to let the women, the girls go to school and college, and women go to work. I think that would be the basic thing to do. Online may not solve the problem.
Okay, thank you so much. And this is one of the challenges, obviously, we hear, as you mentioned in the textbook, that that certain privileges have always only been available to those who are living in the city, in the capital city, Kabul. But outside of the capital city, unfortunately, there are limited resources, especially when it comes to electricity, Wi-Fi, internet, telephones, computers, etc., which makes it very difficult, obviously, to continue education online. So that's where I think some foreigners do not necessarily know the lack of resources and infrastructure outside of Kabul city. Although in Kabul, most people do have access to computers and internet, but as you mentioned, it's not always available at all times, which makes it very difficult for students and administration to offer classes online. There is some hope, obviously. We can perhaps learn best practices that have been practiced in Iran, as well as in Pakistan. I know the Virtual University of Pakistan made online education available over 2 decades ago, and they were very successful in offering education to both girls as well as other Pakistanis in the rural areas. So where they would complete most of their classes online from home, but they would come for exams, usually to certain centers that would be convenient for those students. So hopefully that's another area in the future that can be implemented in Afghanistan as well. Last but not least, Dr. Safi, I wanted to mention and ask you the question regarding What is your advice for international management students or college graduates? Because you have worked with a diverse workforce in North America, in the Middle East and Asia, and many other places around the globe. Based on your reflections in the book, One Life in Afghan Remembers, what suggestions, what advice do you have for university students who are just about to graduate and go into the workforce? What can they do to work effectively with cross-cultural teammates, either face-to-face or through remote modalities? And as professionals, as expatriates, as international managers, what can they do to create an inclusive and productive work environment that works for all diverse individuals and teammates that they work with?
Well, in order to improve their performance on the job overseas in a different culture, there are two things. First of all, it's advantage. They will have advantage if they learn the local language and familiarize themselves with the local culture. In my case, I was fortunate when I went to, before I went to Kuwait to work at Kuwait University, I had spent 5 years in Lebanon. And at that time, I had learned English and Arabic, both languages. So I had functional language of both languages when I went to Kuwait. And in Kuwait, I needed both languages because I was working at the Evaluation and Measurement Center for Evaluation and Measurement, and we were in contact with the faculty at the university, with faculty and with colleges and the other administrators. So some colleges were in English, like in Faculty of Medicine, Science, and Engineering. I think they were in English, and we had some professors who were not from the Arab countries. So we had to, our correspondent with the faculty and administrators was in both languages, in English and Arabic. And I happen to have a knowledge of both of them. So in that case, you say and also the culture, like you say, there are cultural things. I remember once my wife and I went to the market, this called souk, they call it. We went there and we were buying household appliances. And the gentleman there, so he noticed that my wife was a foreigner. Now, I didn't look foreigner, she looked foreigner. So she went inside and looking at the pots and pans and stuff. I was outside talking to the gentleman. He said, is your wife American or European? I said, she is American. She said, okay, how much did you pay? And I said, I didn't pay anything. So he said that, I know, I want one. Can you find me one? I said, you have to do that by yourself. I mean, nobody can help you in that one. So those are cultural things. Like you say, if you hear an American here, how much do you pay? It's not a good thing, you see, probably he will react differently. But if you know the culture, then there's nothing wrong with that one. You see, you just answer this usual conversation, you do that one. So it's a lot of delicate things, you see, like that in culture. If you understand that, it would be easy for you to survive. I mean, once I lost my job just by going to after the Kuwait's liberation from Iraq. I went back to Kuwait and I was working at what is called Language Center, where we were developing the entrance exam in English. So I went to the university president's office. I was talking to him. He said, would you bring your family? And I said, the situation is not very good. So when the situation gets better, I will visit. And then I was talking to him about I said, working at the center was a specialist, they call it. if I were a faculty member, I would have gotten more privileges. So I just discussed that once again. And not knowing when I came out, his office manager was there. So I sat down with office manager. He was Egyptian. He had worked there for ages, a long time. So he knew everything. And I mentioned that as soon as I mentioned changing the status, it was like a bombshell. I don't know, something like that one. And finally, what they did was like communicated with my boss at the language center, and at the end of that year, my contract was ended. So that was the thing you say, like you said, last. But since I knew people there, I found a better job there. So I went back there and I kept working in Kuwait, so like that. But the problem is here when you let's just think about those things, a delicate thing that you think is harmless, it could be harmful. So just be aware of your language, what you say. That one, okay. And there's the delicacy of the culture and the language. If you know, like familiar with the culture and you speak the language, then you have an advantage.
Well, thank you so much. Those are great suggestions, recommendations for any student who's graduating from college and jump into the work world, whether it's in Afghanistan, in Europe, in North America, in Latin America, or any South African country, or any place in the world. Today, we're likely to have diverse teammates, colleagues, superiors, customers. So therefore, it's beneficial, obviously, to know multiple languages, especially the language of your employees and customers, or the local language, in order to understand the nuances associated with the norms and traditions, as you have provided several examples for us. So I also encourage all the graduates or graduating students and those who are working as expats to really pay attention to the language part, because without that, it's going to be extremely difficult to be successful in a local environment. And obviously, you had to learn English at a young age. Did you speak any English when you left Afghanistan? And you learned Arabic ultimately. You speak Pashto, you speak Dari or Persian. So you speak 4 different languages at a minimum. And so how did you come about to learning English, which is the international business language of the world?
When I got a scholarship at AUB, that's the American University of Beirut, when I went there, I had to take an entrance exam. I failed the entrance exam when I got there. So they put me what is called the orientation program. So you studied English from 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon with 1 hour lunch time. And you learn to speak, you learn to write, you learn to a lot of things. So that's like the 4 skills of languages. And that's what I did for, after 1 semester, I took the entrance exam again, I failed it. So I went back to the orientation program and studied for another semester. So after the 2nd semester, I passed the entrance exam and became a regular student.
Wow, the struggles of college education continues. Obviously, you obviously failed a couple of times the college entrance exam for English, but nonetheless, you continued and passed it, and then continued education in all the way to doctorate degree at a prestigious university, Columbia University, and then continued obviously as an educator and administrator. So those are huge achievements. It got you to a point where not only you've been very successful in helping thousands and thousands of students all over the world, but now you have shared your insights, your knowledge, your memoir with us in the English language, so everybody can benefit from it throughout the world. I just want to say I've read the book. I loved it. I could relate to many of the experiences and insights, and it is a treasure that every person should be reading if they're interested in the affairs of Afghanistan and the culture and the development of Afghanistan. I enjoy your recommendations. Hopefully the current administration of Afghanistan also pays attention to implementing some of the recommendations. As you mentioned, without gender equality and providing equal education to boys and girls, it's going to be very difficult, obviously, to continue the growth and compete with the rest of the world. So the recommendations are very practical, and I hope we can implement some of these in Afghanistan immediately. I just want to say thank you. You have been a mentor to hundreds of others throughout the world. You're a mentor to me. I enjoyed reading your book and hearing your insight. And also, thank you for sharing your wisdom in this interview. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Safi.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and really, good luck to all your students. I hope they succeed in their careers and become a useful member of their communities.
Thank you, everybody, for watching this interview about One Life in Afghan Remembers, and I wish you all great success in bringing inclusion and equity for both men and women in Afghanistan, so everyone can be productive members of society. Good luck, and Khuda Hafiz.